This is an unofficial translation.
Askets Clarifications. Written down on the 1st of September of 1964 in Mehrauli, India. Wordly retransmitted through Asket with the help of her Apparatuses, which enabled this wordly retransmission from her subconsciousness. The following clarifications were provided on the 3rd of February 1956 from Asket, while we were located in her spaceship in the Jordanian mountains in the desert, and indeed at the Jebel Ithriyat.
The creation is the basic fundamental of the life and of the being.
Being written with large letters means creation's existence. Written only with the first letter capitalized, being, means material existence, life.
In the power of the creation we fulfill our mission, which not only has intercosmic meaning, rather all-universal meaning, because the creation is the life, and the creation is the being.
Creation's existence.
And in order to fulfill our mission we have to neutralize the space and time configurations of ours and of yours universe, with which we can bring about a harmonic passage without damage to ships and universes, because our home world lies in the DAL universe, in the system Akon, in a foreign system Real Earth human beings, of a likewise foreign universe Diol, from which several surround the universe familiar Diol. Many of these universes lie in other time planes and in fully alien spaces Diol. Our universe is a parallel sister universe to that of yours, and it lies calculated according to yours time in an equal plane.
Our universe is called D-E-R-N universe, which means that they have arisen as twins from a singular creation idea.
The difference between yours and our time is only very narrow. The basis of our coming into this of yours universe lay at earlier times, which are calculated with several centuries, in the urge of research of our race, which came from yours universe, the D-E-R-N universe, at earlier times. Enabled through technical development, a universe barrier became opened between our universe and yours, which warranted us the entrance into yours time. Afterward the lost knowledge about that was reprocessed thousands of years ago. Since then we researched the frontier of yours universe again and uncovered this solar system, as well as this world, some centuries ago. To be exact, the centuries strung together according to yours time calculation would be 33, during which we traveled again to yours universe and were able to research. Through our incessant research we also found this world as well as finding our ancestral home again and the responsible ones of that time, which were in charge of the human life upon this world, because a part of the human beings of the earth were not born here. Many are the descendants of those, which came from the frontier of the universe, from that space, which you're calling nebula. Namely in those areas lie the real ancestral home of the late terrestrial human races. The very descendants of the terrestrial ancestors today no longer populate the areas and spaces and the systems around the Ring Nebula and the Vega and Lyra stars in any case, rather they live on planets, far beyond the systems, which you'll call seven stars or Pleiades. They are the far descendants of yours and our very ancestral ancestors. Yet about all these things you shall have explained by the descendants of yours ancestors themselves, calculated from today, in somewhat less than 20 Earth years, if you are mature enough, in order to cope with the new clarifications and recognitions. Until then however it is up to you, to learn a lot more and to guide your knowledge and your wisdom into very high levels, so you may fulfill your difficult mission through that. You are through designated through your own initiative as bringer of truth, like already innumerable others at very early times before you. Yet in order to be able to become equitable to your mission as such, you must become greater in the knowledge of the Spirit as every other human of your time.
Knowledge of the Spirit equals knowledge of the spiritual creational matters, interdependencies, as well as laws and recommendations and so on.
Therefore you became positioned under the control supervision of a determined life form already before your birth,
Sfath.
who had to protect, guide, lead, and instruct you. This happened just like with all earlier bringers of truth, which partly were reincarnations of your spirit form, and who were already before their birth picked out and were prepared on their mission according to the reanimation. This represents a law of the creation, which for that matter cannot become counteracted. It is erroneous to believe that bringers of truth and announcers of truth would be called up only at a certain age into their missions, because their way is already determined by themselves in their earlier life before the conception. If a bringer of truth and announcer of truth becomes born, then they are thus already determined to their mission, and thus will develop themselves accordingly also already before the birth of their life. One such life will be extraordinarily difficult and hard in each case, while the form of life in question likewise has to learn extraordinary amounts. A prophet may never lead an easy, introspective, and gentle life. If, therefore, forms of life occur as supposed bringers of truth and prophets and so on, whose life has not proceeded into the hardest paths, then they can never be bringers of truth and prophets and so on. This is only able to herald then also only unlogical and false truths, through which the forms of life succumb to enslavement of all kind and become dependent on unreal things. Truthfully bringers of truth and prophets however bring words and truth of freedom and of the knowledge, of the love, and of the wisdom in absolute logic. False bringers of truth and false prophets and so on bring only false teachings in unlogic, which according to the persistent passing of time in development has to be newly formed and must be revised, while truthfully bringers of truth and prophets and so on only bring the teaching of the truth, which is of eternal constancy and can never become modified. The eternal truth already remains the eternal truth, also if new words and concepts repeatedly have to be brought up due to the development of language. In less than 20 Earth years will the time come for you, when you will write a great work of the truth, which will be transmitted to you by a very high spirit form. It will reach you from the same level, from which also Emmanuel has received his knowledge, the son of a carpenter, who you'll erroneously call Jesus Christ. It will be the ultimate work of the new time, the work of the truth, of the knowledge, of the clarification, of the wisdom, and of the love, the work of the Aquarian time.
Decalogue do Decalogue and Arahat other Sada.
It will be the work of absolute truth in the connection with many other things. It will be the work of the absolute truth and becomes written for all coming times. Never will this work be able to be replaced by further new ones, because it will convey the last truth. And this truth of the eternal is not subject to alterations and renewals, because it is constant in the absolute of all times and spaces. It is the assignment of ever higher developed form of life, to helpingly stand next to underdeveloped forms in responsible measure, in order to influence the evolution in given power. All forms of life of all universes are obliged by this assignment, because it rests in a creational law. And thus we are here from a foreign universe to all, obliged also by this duty here, wherefore we come into unofficial contact at the given time with this universe with a qualified and highly developed form of life, because it rests in a creational law. This will however primarily be in some years out, if I go back into my universe, according to which then somebody else will take up contact with you.
This other form of life, that is person, was sadly killed in an accident only a few years after this conversation. Subsequently I also took over and committed to their duty.
As already highly developed forms of life we have in this, y'all's own universe, recognized very many things, which are of very dangerous course. The humanity of the earth has stepped into the age of the knowledge and of the development, yet however knowledge and development became maliciously disturbed through many sorts of factors, in particularly through erroneous ideologies, which enslavingly, submissively, and exploitatively work themselves out on the humanity. Limitless greed for power is innate in all terrestrial ideologies, and the intrinsic seal embodiment of all exists in the attainment of a world domination, which, without exception, becomes strived for by all directions of belief, insofar as they are religiously or secretively multiplexively directed. It is undoubtful that many terrestrial governments become religiously steered and led, or at least are subject to a certain religious influence. And through these governments on the other side, independent likewise steady efforts become undertaken on a political basis, in order to, from their side, snatch the world domination for themselves. These two-sided malicious efforts have over and over again led to war actions and otherwise death-bringing riots, through which innumerable human lives became annihilated. Only for the purpose of the attainment of the world domination became the knowledge of the new time spread out by the earth human beings. All his developments and inventions he transformed into death-bringing weapons. The cornerstone of the life.
The atom.
He forced into dangerous explosives, in order to repurpose this cornerstone of life itself into a deadly weapon. And already in the all shortest time will the earth human being escape from his atmosphere with manned rockets. Soon also will the time be there, when the earth human being lands on the earth's moon and speaks great words of betrayal of peace and love. It will however only be words of deception, because the sense of those earth human beings, which allow these words to be carried out into space, crave only in their unquellable greed after power and world domination. Their words will be only evil lies and intrigues, in order to pretendingly betray real peaceful forms of life and beat them into submission. Ideologies and politics of the earth work in these things mutually and shy away from no sort of intrigueful means, in order to reach their power-greedy seals. The earth humanity has reached a high status in terms of evolution, however only in technical and pure material understanding-based hindsight. The spiritual and consciousness-based evolution became, so far, however maliciously handicapped and neglected and supplanted with the worldly and material things. From that resulted that many sorts of evil things could proliferate and ascend into fanaticism. As evilest factors are withal to name the terrestrial ideologies, through which all reality and truth become slandered and hindered. In this relation the earth must be described as carriers of such a real ideologies then unparalleledly in all the universes and all worlds known to us. Nowhere else exist such ideologies of delusion, like they are rampant across this earth here. The terrestrial ideologies in particular, and the terrestrial politics have turned into a danger, which begins to spread itself slowly and deadly. With that it is not enough, that space-traveling races have already moved 3 of their home worlds into an uproar through the terrestrial ideological delusion, and are to be brought under control again through external powers, and the earth human being drives also his world and the whole solar system into the dangerous proximity of ruin. 3 of the space-travel-capable human races from far galaxies of this universe dispatched their expedition ships less than 130 Earth years ago and came across the Earth. With no clarification they investigated this world and stepped into contact also with priestly Earth human beings, covertly and unknown, so as not to spread terror and angst. They heard and learned the delusion of their ideologies from the earth human beings, and suddenly believed in a philosophy of creation and erroneously led and handicapped evolution of consciousness. As a very far underdeveloped form of life in terms of consciousness, the earth human beings could plunge these foreign forms of life into doubt and sowed quarrel among them. Yet that was then a wonder, if it's considered that very high developed forms of life from foreign galaxies visited the Earth and suddenly became instructed here of that they, as a very far developed race of the creation shall have been handicapped